Hi there, my name is Matthew Carson with the Open Source Energy Network. We're very excited to be bringing these testimonies before you today, but first of all we'd like to thank the Disclosure Project. The Disclosure Project has spent a couple years and over $250,000 acquiring these exceptional energy testimonies from trailblazers in the clean, free, renewable energy field. These testimonies are testimonies. They aren't simply interviews. They have been documented with affidavits and documented credentials. These people have important things to say about the current state of energy as it is in the world today. Please listen carefully, watch carefully, share these videos, disperse them amongst your friends, email the links around, but make sure to donate directly to the Disclosure Project today, and keep in mind that these are not fictional interviews or showbiz articles. These are testimonies that we hope, and the Disclosure Project hopes, will eventually stand in a court of law. Thank you.
I studied physics at Johns Hopkins for my BA degree, and then I got a master's in business administration at the University of Chicago. I got my PhD after that at Portland State University in systems science, which was an interdisciplinary program. And my thesis dealt with a range of both astronomy and geology area, studying a new phenomenon of how the galactic center can affect the Earth through cosmic ray volleys. My interest in electrogravitics, which is Townsend Brown's work, began in 1985. I was interested because the physics theory I had been working on predicted a coupling between electricity and gravitation, which is pretty much what Brown was illustrating experimentally. In particular, let's say in the standard physics theory with like general relativity, which is our current theory of gravitation, you have only one polarity to gravity, so masses can only attract, and there's no possibility for gravitational repulsion or anti-gravity. Anything that physicist comes up with that is sort of speculating outside of that framework. Physicists have proposed that there might be some coupling between electricity and gravitation at very high energies, and that's one of their reasons for building these huge particle colliders, is they're hoping to find this connection. If they just look before their eyes, the experimental evidence, there is a connection, but it just normal laboratory voltages that you can generate. Brown had kind of a maypole that he built with two discs that he would charge the discs, and the leading edge of each disc had a wire that would emit positive ions, and the body of the disc was negatively charged. Can you see that? Does it show up well? And he would charge an initial experiment, this type that you see here. He charged it with 50,000 volts, about 50 watts of power, and this would spin around 12 miles per hour in the circuit. And then he is reported to have done a similar thing but larger on a 50-foot course, charging to 150,000 volts, and these were going several hundred miles per hour. So if you can picture about like model airplane speed, model airplanes can go several hundred miles an hour. And this was done something around 1953 in Pearl Harbor, and it demonstrated to some top brass from the military, and the subject is reported to have become classified after that. They were so impressed with the results. Some people have said, well, this is due to ion propulsion, that the ions coming off of the front of the craft somehow blow the craft and cause it to move. And there have been experiments done to show this is not the case. In fact, Brown tested his idea in a vacuum. So there was eliminating the idea of ions. And it actually worked better in a vacuum. And now I was interested because I could explain this with my theory, basically that the positive charges would create gravitational wells, just like our current concept of a gravitational well around a massive object. Whereas electrons would do the opposite. They'd create gravity hills, which in effect you'd say is a gravitational repulsion effect. And so if you look at Brown's disk, according to my theory, you get a gravity potential hill, G hill, towards the negative charged end of the craft, and a G well towards the positive. And so there'd be, in effect, a gravitational gradient created across it, which would tend to propel it forward. Well, I know that in '52 he put on a demonstration to the Office of Naval Research. It's kind of interesting that why would they end up classifying the whole project, his whole concept, a year later, if there wasn't this serious this approach to take him seriously. Okay, well, I believe that there are many ways to create a gravitational effects, or at least the approaches I've heard of, are quite different. There's like various ways to skin the cat, I guess. Now, Brown was using high voltage charge, and it appears that that technology is used on the B2. It involves using a maser. In this case, this would be a different approach than what Brown was doing. This is using microwaves to create pushes, to be able to push on a distant surface, retracing the path of the incoming waves. This is a very well-known technology in the area of optics, and there's a lot of literature on it for use with lasers. But you find nothing in the area of microwaves, and I believe the reason is it's very highly classified because of its ability to be used for UFO propulsion. And the beauty of this is that the microwaves stay in the beam. They don't scatter out. That's the nature of it. So you pump up your beam, in effect, with energy, and it's not lost. It's like you're putting your energy into a tube. It's a resonator. And so, in effect, you could create a craft that's standing on poles. They in effect, become like solid poles between the craft and the ground. And this is how for example, the TR-3B, there's some talk about this using anti-gravity technology, and it has 3 thrusters on the bottom. Well, this is what the thrusters would be. There have been triangular UFOs. The TR-3B is one of the triangular-shaped UFOs that we've heard about. The UFOs that may be of alien origin, disc-shaped, and some of them may be some that we have created ourselves, probably use this technology. You often see 3 domes underneath. I believe these are actually microwave transmitters for the beams. I think Robert Lazar has spoken about his experience with a few of these devices at Area 51. My first exposure to the discovery that this anti-gravity research was quite a big area, not talked about very much, but that it was a major endeavor by major aerospace corporations. This came from this report, Electrogravitic Systems, which I found very revealing. This is a photocopy. The way I came about this report, I was at the Library of Congress looking under gravitation to see if there was anything closely, remotely touching on the subject of electrogravitics, which I had at that time in 1985 just become acquainted with its existence through some articles about Townsend Brown. And there was only one card in the whole catalog which came close to this, and this was about this report. And interestingly, it was missing from the stacks, and they had to do a computer search, to see where could there be another one. And the fellow said, this must be a very rare report. He says, it's only in one other library in the whole U.S. And I said, where is that? He said, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So I went ahead and ordered it through an interlibrary loan request, and I was surprised that they actually sent the copy to me. It's actually this is red cardboard jacket, and it's bound to the side. And this was produced by a group called Aviation Studies International, which is kind of a think tank in London that produces intelligence reports. And they've been in existence for, well, they're still in existence, and this report was dated in 1956. And it was basically trying to encourage the aircraft industry to develop Brown's technology, Townsend Brown's electrogravitics technology, with the idea of developing a Mach 3 fighter craft, or maybe even to commercialize it. So we, instead of taking jets, we will fly much faster with electrogravitics. And they did a survey of the aviation industry at that time, and they named some major aircraft companies. I have here in my book, Quantum Kinetics, I take excerpts from this study and just name some companies. It says here Glenn Martin, it's a former company named for Martin Marietta, which is now merged and has a different name. It says, Glenn Martin now feels ready to say in public that they are examining the unified field theory to see what can be done, and so on. Let's see. Then further on, it says here, companies studying the implications of gravitics are said in a new statement to include Glenn Martin, Convair, Sperry Rand, Sikorsky, Bell, Lear, and Clark Electronics. Among companies who have previously evinced interest include Lockheed Douglas and Hiller. And they were calling, the people who were writing this aviation studies report were calling for a Manhattan-style project to develop this, that this was going to change our whole aviation technology. Here, then later in Business Week magazine, they listed an impressive array of companies and institutions backing gravity research, just back in the 50s. And that included Martin, Grumman, Lockheed, Sperry Rand, so on. And also Hughes Aircraft should be added to the list. I do believe that we have technology presently developed in which would allow us to easily navigate the solar system with it. I wouldn't be surprised if we had bases on Mars and the Moon and were regularly going there with these kinds of craft. If we have that ability. Let's say there was a Roswell crash, and it is said that the National Security Agency was formed to keep this all classified. Now, something like that is a very emotional experience when some of your government officials and you realize that we've had that there is extraterrestrial life and they have this advanced technology. And when you become very emotional about something, one reaction is to hide it, and then to see how can we use this for ourselves. We've got to keep one step ahead of the other countries. At that time, we had the Cold War with the Soviet Union. So this was a rationale, was to use it for military purposes. Now, you can think back. Suppose the same thing happened 100 years ago at the time the automobile was developed. I sincerely believe we'd still be driving horse and buggies today, because there would be the fear that the automobile could change warfare. It would mean much higher speed travel, and obviously we should classify this. At that time, there wasn't the same mechanism in place for. We didn't have the NSA and this major program to contain advanced technologies. We think of it as a science, as a scientific discipline. It's based on observation and it's open to change. And one thing I've learned, because I have my degree in physics from since '69, at that time I was thinking that it was that way, that it was very objective science. And as you learn more about it and about the people, about the scientists themselves, you realize how much it is a religion. It's very closed it's resistive to changing its fundamental principles, like it has relativity as one foundation, the energy conservation laws and other key foundation, for example, in the Patent Office, any chance of a new device coming that could help us to solve our energy crisis problem, which has it's getting its energy from someplace that the patent examiner doesn't understand where it might be coming from, he immediately thinks, oh, this is in violation of the first law of thermodynamics, which is one of these principles the physicists have set up. Not thinking, well, maybe there is a source of energy that we just haven't discovered. Right now it doesn't necessarily fit into the physics framework. Instead of thinking that way, they immediately reject it, thinking, well, this fellow is a fraud, or he did his measurements wrong. And so it's almost like it's a very religious feeling where the examiners have ascribed to a certain belief system, and anything that challenges that, they will deny its existence. This was a case of a Canadian fellow that had developed a technology for producing enough power to power your house out of something about the size of a shoebox. It was a new way of wiring something up, so some sort of nonlinear device. And he was very open about it and publicizing it and trying to find investors to sell the rights. And as I understand the story, his house was one day surrounded by a SWAT team, and all his stuff was confiscated, and he was arrested on the grounds that he was harboring terrorist technology or weaponry. And he was released. If he signed something that he would not continue doing work in this area, and so now he's mowing lawns for a living. I mean, this is kind of a very lame excuse for suppressing this kind of thing. In my opinion, if they are really that frightened about these new technologies, they can always license them, just like you license radio stations or whatever, to keep tabs on it, how much power it produces for what purpose. And I think our current crisis with energy is important enough that this is the least they can do, instead of arresting people who are trying to help the world. The way I had concluded that B2 may be using the electrogravitics technology of Townsend Brown was through an article published in Aviation Week and Space Technology, and there were some black project engineers who had disclosed to the editor of the magazine about some black project technology that they were aware of. And one of the things they said was in relation to the B2, that the B2 charges the leading edge of its wing to a high voltage, and its exhaust is charged to an opposite charge, high voltage charge. And they had given some explanations of how this would help, for example, soften the sonic boom if you charge the leading edge of the wing, which is true. In fact, it's one of the things that Brown had talked about. Also, the exhaust, they were saying how this helps cool exhaust and disguise the signature, the infrared signature of the exhaust, which is also true. They didn't go further to explain the tie-in with electrogravitics. And that's the connection that I made. I realized that this was in effect a description of Townsend Brown's patented device, which looked something like this in his patent, which was issued in 1962, his electrokinetics patent. And he was proposing a disc-shaped craft that would use what he called flame jet generators. These are jet engines that have been converted into sort of giant Van de Graaff generators. He was proposing that you could develop actually 15 million volts through this technique. In effect, then, the jet becomes your electrical generator. It's, in effect, a high voltage electric generator. And he was saying with that power, you are able to feed the positive side of the generator to the front of your craft and generate your ions, just like he was doing in those small discs that he was testing that were going hundreds of miles per hour. except here you're doing it on a very large scale. This is from Quantum Kinetics, and it explains how a particle comes into being. Okay, because the reason I'm talking about this now is that subquantum kinetics allows for the possibility of materialization and dematerialization. Now, but if you were to be able to raise this G well, so this supercritical region, this fertile region, disappeared, this particle theoretically would dematerialize, would go back to the vacuum condition. In relation to technology of spacecraft, advanced technology, there's stories of how craft can actually dematerialize visually. And so my theory about this is that they're able to affect the gravity field of the craft and cause this. This is within the context of subquantum kinetics, is how I would think it would occur, is that they are able to make the craft lighter, in effect, like raise the gravity potential to make a G hill there. And the waves, the formed particles, would diminish, go more towards the vacuum state. There appears to be a process where the American Physical Society spokesman, Robert Park, makes fun of the new technology on his website, making sort of sarcastic comments about it, or pointing out how it breaks certain laws of physics that are their codes of what they believe is valid, and in effect creating the impression that this is a fraudulent idea, that somebody's doing something illegal to be trying to sell this idea or patent it. In the case of black light, they had a long vendetta against the inventor of this process, who is able to get energy out of just plain water. That a glass of water would produce more energy than if you had that glass filled with gasoline, which is what Mills is finding. He's finding ultraviolet light is given off during this transition, and this is how he generates the energy. And he has a catalyst that's able to release this energy. Well, he has made some patents on this, and just as the one patent on this was about to issue, it had been actually announced in the Patent Gazette and was formally going to issue in a week or two, Robert Park starts making fun of it on his website, and apparently there must have been a email campaign or contacting the patent office. It embarrassed the patent office, and they pulled the patent, which is really illegal what they did, to withdraw a patent after it had been already approved to be issued. Because according to patent law, you're only an invention is allowed to be patented if it works, and if it's something new. It can work and break the laws of physics as physicists know it, and it still has the right to be patented. Time and again, technology has driven physics theory. Physics theory tends to be restraining on technological advancement, because all you would come up with is the ideas that your theory happened to predict. Now, if that was the case, our technological advance would slow to a halt. So the system, fortunately, our patent system is set up to allow us to go beyond the laws of physics to patent things that work. Now, what the Patent Office in its current approach is, it's actually breaking the law. It's trying to make happy the physicists who are with American Physical Society, to keep them in power with their ideas, you might say, and withhold from public use good inventions that could solve our problems, like the energy crisis. And, Blacklight Power, the company that has this invention, is not taking this lightly, and they have initiated a court suit. And I think very strong possibility they're going to win this case. But you see, this is not an isolated case. There's a whole pattern of this going on at the Patent Office. I personally know, because I was at the Patent Office for about a year, and I know some people there, and I know some of the things that were going on. And for example, there was somebody I know who issued a patent on a process of sending signals faster than the speed of light. This was then made fun of by Robert Park on his website. Through their connections, they had this posted somewhere as the most ridiculous patent of the year award, this sort of thing. In effect, they embarrassed the Patent Office, and shortly after this happened, this embarrassing publicity occurred, the commissioner of the Patent Office reprimanded the examiner and his supervisor, and he threatened to fire the supervisor. So in effect, trying to satisfy this lobby group, that's all you can call it, it's a lobby group, it's outside the government, that has undue influence on the Patent Office and shouldn't really be allowed to. I mean, they can say what they want, it's freedom of speech, but for the Patent Office to do their bidding instead of following a law, that is illegal. I mean, you could argue just on the basis of viewing physics as a religion, in a way, a belief system, that anything that challenges their belief system they're going to oppose. And they don't care if it's something that's going to help society, because it would make them look like fools that, geez, they can't explain this, and maybe their theories are wrong. People are going to start wondering, why do we send our children to colleges? Why are these university professors getting funded to build huge accelerators, which, for what purpose? You know, why do we spend billions of dollars on a super collider in Texas? And so there obviously must be a monetary connection here, where they're trying to protect their butts for funding too. And it's self-interest, you know, and heck with the rest of the world. You know, let global warming happen. If it doesn't fit into our physics box, that's too bad. In effect, these new technologies, new energy technologies, for example, are the underdog. You have to admit it. They don't fit into the paradigm that is currently taught and believed, and so they are left out of getting the funding to be developed or to get their patents, even to the point that they're breaking the law to prevent them from their patents from being issued. Without their patents being issued, how are investors going to invest in the company? So we need a massive education program to educate the Patent Office on how they should follow the law instead of breaking the law, and funding institutions like National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, to start funding something we have to do in this state of crisis that we're in. Because we see already with the oil problems and the high prices, we have heard about the melting of the Arctic, the rise in temperature, global warming effects. These are real. So we really have to start initiating this program as soon as possible. This should be a major issue of concern for Congress. The paradigm that we're in, that's been taught it's being taught in our universities, in physics classes, chemistry classes. It's fine in the past, and it's done well, but we're at a point where we need to go beyond that. We need technologies that don't fit in that paradigm.